and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Holy Rivals Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown. With me is DJ Jazzy Jeff Moen Show. How you doing, Moen?
Doing good. How about yourself, Nate?
I'm doing good. You look great.
Good. Thank you.
We have Bob Thompson that's joined us tonight. How you doing, Bob? How you feeling?
Very well, guys. Good to see you.
Excellent. It's very good to see you too on a Wednesday night. You know, we're getting into bowl season, which I think for you probably used to be pretty fun times, right?
Yeah, we had a few of them over the years. You know, some of the BCS bowls for I think it was 4 years. Some holiday bowls, some cotton bowls. So we dabbled. I'd hit a few every year.
I loved the Holiday Bowl growing up. In the 70s and 80s, the Holiday Bowl was the place to be. I thought that was
always seemed like a real high scoring game and a lot of fun.
Yeah, last possession type ball. Absolutely. Yep. We want to thank everybody for being here with us tonight on a Wednesday evening. We do have additional news that we'll discuss as it relates to the Charlie Baker news that came out yesterday and some of the reporting that's happened on it today. We'll talk about that with Bob. We'll also talk a little NIL. We can't really get real expansive, but we will talk to him about NIL just a bit. And then, of course, we'll talk Florida State and how big a deal that is. It's really sending shockwaves that are much bigger than I think anybody intended them to be. And then we'll get to some other news and notes. So we're very glad to have you with us tonight. Please, can I push you to our show and our YouTubes, our YouTube show and our Twitter addresses? Please click on those, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. And we're very glad to have everybody with us tonight. Let me get some hellos and how do you do's out of the way. First of all, we have another member that's joined us today, Sylvia Garcia, in the house. Thank you, Sylvia. It's nice to have you. Appreciate you. I appreciate you becoming a paying member. That means a lot to me. And a little bit later, I'll go through how other people can sign up and become a paying member of the Big 12 Mafia family. Really quick, let's get some hellos out of here. Jan Holk, who I come to find out is in Slovenia and found us on YouTube. I'm not sure how, but Jan, thank you so much for being here. Let's see here. We got Eugene, who's one of our paying members. Good to see you, Eugene. Joey Z is in the house. Blaze Barstow, a new member, is here. He says, good evening. It's good to have you here, Blaze. Let's see. Phil Port is here. Ag biochemist. Wow, there's a lot more here than I thought was going to be. Craig Kirsch is in the house. Mr. Monkey Says is in the house. David Hackett, another one of our paid members, is here. And lastly, but not least, is Bo Stacker. Thanks a lot, Bo. Appreciate you being here. And always, it's great to see new faces. And having you be a consistent return, that really makes me feel good. One last thing I want to get from Craig Kirsch. He says, BYU beating SMU was the greatest Holiday Bowl ever in 1980. Do you remember that game? That was Jim McMahon.
No, I don't remember.
You don't remember? All right.
No, I was still in college. I was actually still in college.
Oh, my gosh. Well, anyways, that was the Pony Express days, obviously, 1980. BYU beat them. They were down, I believe, 4 touchdowns with 4.5 minutes left, something like that. And Jim McMahon brought them back and won the game. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, if you can find that, by the way, on YouTube, it's one of the best football games you'll ever see. Now, the people are like this big, and it's so grainy, you can't see through it, but it sure was good football. Anyway, Daniel Gygax sneaks in the door before we get on to other stuff. So is Timothy Green. All right, I'm going to start off with you, Bob. I just want to turn over a few minutes to you. I know you've got some, probably you've got a lot tied up into some of this stuff that's happened with Florida State and how they were left out and kind of what some of those ramifications might be for college football overall. What were your first thoughts when you saw that happen?
Well, I really didn't understand it because I didn't see how this wouldn't have been a discussion over Texas and Alabama as opposed to Florida State.
Right.
And some of the reasoning that I heard from the committee just didn't really make sense to me. The whole idea about, their quarterback was injured. Well, the quarterback who was playing, and they weren't moving the ball and they weren't doing all this stuff against Louisville. But that's not even the quarterback who's probably going to be playing in the bowl game.
Right.
Because that guy's under concussion protocol. He'll be out. No, it's not going to be their first string guy, got his leg broke or ankle broke. But I think that's a bad precedent to set, to say, well, somebody's hurt, and so we're going to move you, further back down the line. They've never used that excuse before, to my knowledge. And to start now, I think it's sad. The only good thing is, starting next year, we'll go to 12 teams. But there's still going to be arguments about the 12 teams. I mean, 13 through 18 are all going to be arguing about getting into those last few spots as well. So
Right.
not going to resolve the problem. And I think they really need to kind of maybe refine their selection process a bit. It's going to be easier with the auto bids and the expanded field, and that will make certain things, go a lot smoother. But there's still going to be beefs, and these beefs can turn into a lot of money. I mean, just the fact that they're Florida State's in New Year's Six as opposed to one of the semis, that's $2 million. And then there's a variety of other things, bowl ramifications down the line that affected the ACC, where somebody projected that it was going to cost them $30 million. And
Right.
that's a year's TV money in the ACC. And so, that was kind of disappointing to me. And I'm sure when they went out there saying that, we're going to move Florida State out and put Alabama and Texas in, I got to think they knew that, what was going to hit the fan. And it certainly did. And it hasn't really let up. I don't know if there's anything that Florida can do about it. I mean, Florida State can do about it, or the state of Florida can do about it, but it certainly left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
The lack of transparency to the entire process, I think, is what is the most damaging, right? We don't know what their decision-making process is. We don't know what formulas they're using. We don't know how sort of the negotiation process that happens between people deciding where their vote's going to go. Does that concern you, that lack of transparency? And what is the easiest way to fix that, to make that so that it's not a problem in the future?
Well, when it's more of an invitational than a play-in, it's difficult.
Right.
And that was always one of the problems we had at Fox with the BCS. It was kind of they used a variety of polls, but there was also some human element to it. And I think that a lot of people didn't like that. And I think with the BCS, with the CFP, they probably went with more of a human element. And
Right.
it probably worked. It seemed to have worked out pretty good until, there's always been a few arguments here and there, but this one kind of was the one they were always concerned could happen. It did. And you're right. The lack of transparency. I don't think you want to go strictly computers.
Right.
That's just not quite the way to go. But I think whatever it is, they're going to have to lay it out and be very transparent as to going forward what it is, because this next round, if we get a huge TV deal, which, it's going to be a whole lot more than they're making right now, but probably not as good as if they had done this deal a year and a half ago. But it's going to be still worth a lot of money. And so there's going to be effects and there's ramifications when people are excluded for less than, stellar reasons.
I think that's a great comment. Moen?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Bob. The fact that an undefeated conference champion gets left out and 2 one-loss conference champions make it in is actually, I think it's a travesty. And it's a terrible argument. Like I said, I brought it up several times. In 2014, Ohio State was on their third-string quarterback and leapfrogged Baylor and TCU to get in. So I have no problem. I understand it's in the criteria, but I have a problem when the criteria is not applied evenly, which is certainly the case here. And it's not been applied evenly.
I don't know about all the and probably don't even want to get into all the, conspiracy theories about ESPN promoting the SEC over the ACC. I mean,
Right.
God, they pay them both a lot of money.
They do.
At the end of the day, it certainly helped the SEC in that they've got clearly a school into the Final Four and another three, I think, in the New Year's Six, Missouri. Who else they get? Missouri, Georgia, and one other. Tennessee. Is it Tennessee?
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. That's it.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. So they in those group of six bowl or those New Year's Six bowls are worth a lot of money as well. So, but put all that aside, I think it was sad, and I think it's something that they need to consider going forward. And I hope that they've kind of learned the lesson, and we can all not have this happening again. But I can't say it won't.
Immaculate couldn't be here with us tonight. He had to work, so he left a question with me. I hope I do it right, because he's very detailed in his questioning. Yeah, you've had him here a couple times. You know how detailed he can get. So if I screw this up, it's on me. It's not on him. He says, from a network executive perspective, how much should the ACC and ESPN worry about the possibility of the state of Florida protecting FSU with sovereign immunity should they announce they are leaving the ACC? I think what he's talking about is possibly putting off some of that exit fee money.
Right. I wouldn't be too concerned if I was the network involved with the ACC. Sovereign immunity and all those type of things are way out of my set of legal skills. But
okay.
The bylaws and the grant of rights in the ACC are pretty explicit. And I really got to think that with all the upset people that there's been in the ACC over the last several years, if there was an out, it probably would have been taken by now. Now, maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back, and somebody's prepared to step up and go ahead and say, let's do this. I'll tell you what, the governor put aside $1 million to fight this. He asked the legislature to put aside $1 million. That's not even going to get them started.
Yeah.
That is something that'll be eaten up really, really fast if they're truly going to go and take on I guess they'd sue the CFP, or I guess maybe if they're trying to exit, they sue the
ESPN.
ACC. Yeah, they could try and say ESPN somehow colluded.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to get in and point fingers and say that did or didn't happen. I have no idea. But that's a stretch. But we'll see. It's 2036 is a long ways away, and if Florida State and some others want to get out, sooner rather than later, it's going to be a big nut. But anything can happen in court.
I think the main driver of all this is we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not your average $30 million contract they're trying to get out of. You're in some circles, I've heard upward of $750 million in total fees. Now, I think that's probably crazy. I've guessed that it could be between 250 and 500, but regardless, this is the GDP of 95% of the world's countries. So it just doesn't. The amount of money that we're talking about is just insane, isn't it?
Yeah, and the conference did that because they saw these other conferences having issues, and with people leaving, and sure, there was a big number attached to it, but then it was usually negotiated down, and they went on their merry way. But in order for ESPN to agree to the creation of the ACC network, they wanted to make sure that they were going to have an ACC network to operate for some period of time, which is why the deal goes out to 2036, and why the bylaws were probably changed and tightened up along with the grant of rights on the renewal, so that it makes it much more difficult to leave. And so, what they initially wanted it for the right reasons, but now it's coming back to bite them in the butt. But
absolutely, Moen.
I asked you last time, Bob, to make a pick for who would leave the ACC for the Big Ten and defend it. I'm going to ask you the same question But with the SEC this time, who do
Who's
you
likely
got?
to leave the SEC first?
No. Leave the ACC for the SEC.
For the SEC.
Well, if they would have them, I would say it would be Florida State. I'm not sure the ACC's or the SEC is in the inviting mood right now, but
Right.
Miami, I guess, would be a possibility as well.
Okay.
Very interesting. Let's get to a couple of other topics here. So I've got a tweet here, and I'm going to bring it up from Tim Brando that basically he sums up what happened with Charlie Baker yesterday. You're probably not going to be able to see it there, so I'm going to make it big. I think this was a pretty good summary. But basically, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what stood out to me is a few things. First, we're no longer using Power 5, are we? We're using Autonomous 5. And I actually read in a story, believe it or not, out of the Deseret News in Salt Lake City today, that didn't mention Power 5 once, and it only mentioned Autonomous as the only word that it mentioned in reference to this. Has that name change now become permanent?
No, technically it was always autonomous,
Okay.
but it got to be Power 5 just as a distinction. It seemed to be a better I don't know, better description of what those 5 conferences were.
Okay.
I know that in some of the things I've been involved in, they always preferred that I not use the word Power 5. They prefer the Autonomous 5 name.
Okay.
They think it has less connotation.
Okay. And then down here farther, and I will post the link to this tweet in the comment section so everybody can see it. But the second part of this is he's saying all these conference commissioners are getting together, and they're actually beginning to have conversations about what this is going to look like in 2026. That's got to be a good thing, right? Because for the last 2 years, we've heard nothing but conflict about these conferences attacking each other, stealing each other's schools. Do you think that's sort of a break, like a watershed moment? This Baker statement comes out. He throws it against the wall, says, I need help from the federal government to basically save the NCAA. And these conference commissioners are now on the phone with each other?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like, let's look at that 2 separate things. What the NCAA did was really trying to get some control, and they're trying to figure out a way to, they're admitting that basically they're going to pay the athletes, right?
Right.
They're going to pay them a minimum of $30,000.
Which that number seemed crazy to me because he said both women and men would make the same amount of money.
Well, you've got the whole Title IX thing that has to play into this. And so that's, it's important to take that into consideration. And the other thing he's going for is we don't want them to be considered employees. This is going to be like in a trust fund for you.
Right.
And they also, as part of this, are trying to get an antitrust exemption, just like Major League Baseball has, like the NFL has, like everybody has.
Right.
And then the third thing they're trying to do is get the federal government to pass some language that kind of puts a corral around the collectives, right? So the collectives would move from being kind of the wild, wild west out there on their own to, under the providership of the schools. So the schools would operate the NILs and would dole out that NIL money to whether it's coaches or whether it's, student athletes or what facilities, because one of the effects of these NILs, the collectives, is that people are donating to the NILs and they aren't donating to the schools anymore.
That's right. Yeah, we talked about that last night. Yeah,
that's a big issue. So I think that's what he was trying to do, or what the NCAA is trying to do, and I think that's a good first step. I think, if I watched that interview today with Sankey and Yormark and Phillips, Sankey was a little concerned that they weren't involved. They weren't consulted. It doesn't sound, now, maybe over the years, there's been lots of consultation between the board and the athletic directors and the NCAA on this thing. And this is just finally, he finally, pushed it over the goal line here and came out with it, which was something that Emmert was never able to do. So I think, I think it's good that the commissioners are meeting, and the commissioners are, now going to take a look. They can take a look at the CFP and everything going forward with this new quote subdivision, subdivision of a subdivision
Right.
as Immaculate was saying today in mind, because, some are going to opt in and some won't opt in. I think certainly
Right.
all the autonomous 5 or the A5s, whatever 4s, I guess we'll be at, will opt in. And I think most of the G5s, the major G5s will opt in, but I think a lot of others won't. They can't afford it. They just won't be able to afford it. The TV money doesn't provide enough for them, or their donors level doesn't provide enough, or their NALs aren't robust enough to be able to, 30,000 minimum. So a lot will opt not to go into this new subdivision is my guess. I think, the A5s will probably demand or require that their conferences go, opt to go in, or they'll say, okay, bye-bye. But I can't imagine an A5 school not opting in. So
the unintended consequence could be, though, that to get away from Title IX, they'll just shut down other sports.
without a doubt.
BYU has 872, I think, athletes. There's no way. Stanford has to be maybe even 1,000 because of all the Olympic sports. You would have to shut all those down and run a soccer team and a women's volleyball, maybe gymnastics, and that's it. You'll have a baseball or basketball and football. Everything else will be a club.
Right. You saw, a couple of years ago, Stanford was going to cut 11 sports, and Cal was going to cut a significant number of their sports too. And those schools are both very important as it relates to the Olympic development and things like that. So they all got them back. But now, like you said, if you're gonna do 50% of all those people or all those student athletes have to be, somehow paid $30,000 a piece.
Right.
That's a big nut, and it's going to be difficult for all the schools to do that without, culling the herd a little bit, and that means cutting out some sports.
Yeah, that'd be sad. Moen.
Yeah, you mentioned that you thought conferences would institute buying into this essentially for all their institutions. Do you think a conference, let's say Northwestern, says, "Hey, we don't want to do this. We're the academic superpowers. We're opting out." Does the Big Ten take action against them? How do you see that working?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've read just enough conference bylaws to put me to sleep, but I don't know how much control they have over the conference. You listen to the conferences, and it's like, we serve at the behest of the schools, and the commissioner serves. He's not this godlike figure. He works for the president. So if the president's said, we encourage it, but you don't have to come in. And it's very possible that some schools will say, we don't want to play this game. But if you don't play that game, then the NLRB may come down and say, okay, you don't want to play the game that we've decided you can play, which is pay 50%. You're going to have to play this game, which is they're all employees, and you got to pay them all. Right. And so I guess that's the unintended consequence of this, and with people opting out as to what could potentially happen.
One of our paid viewers, he's been a member from the very beginning. He's a University of Washington Husky, so you'll have to forgive him for that. But Sergeant Pickles asked a good question, and I think this goes to the crux of the problem. He says, "Hey Bob, do you put any stock in this plan to create a Premier League style top division with less NIL restrictions?" And I would add to that, what's the likelihood that will happen?
Right. Look, I think there's got to be a next iteration, because if the sport wants to continue to grow its revenues, they have to do something where TV, who's going to continue to be the major, provider of funds,
Right.
whether it's streaming, whether it's linear, whether it's broadcast, whether it's cable, whatever. They're going to need to see better matchups going forward.
Right.
And if you want top dollars in the playoffs, you want top dollars in the regular season. And I still think, contrary to what some people believe, I see the regular season is still relevant going forward, even though the tournament's got, 3 times as many participants, or the playoffs have 3 times as many participants. So I think it's possible, and I've called it, as opposed to a realignment, it's almost for football only,
Right.
what I call up and out. And so, probably 48 to 50 something brands for football only break off. And there should be some Premier League type method for the schools that aren't in that, if they want to, and they show the commitment, and other schools, fall by the wayside and don't live up to being into that level, that there's a relegation demotion process.
Right.
But that part's really, that takes a whole lot of, work to be done on that. But just the idea that, and this probably, in my mind, doesn't happen for several years, because you need to have an alignment of the current TV deals.
Right.
You've got to get to that point where somebody can come in and maybe provide the gap years of payments, or pay for some early exits out of some conferences from a football standpoint only, so that everybody can start at the same time.
That would be the Sovereign Wealth Fund that we
Sovereign
talked
Wealth
about.
Fund. There was
Yeah.
a guy,
PIF or something like that.
the guy at the SBJ Intercollegiate Athletics thing today, Jerry Cardinal from Redbird Capital. He's a private equity guy. Private equities looked at this sport before. There was a group that looked at purchasing Pac-12 rights for the future. Obviously, that deal never came off, but they were going to pay him some money to kind of buy part of the rights revenue stream. And it's, almost like a loan to a certain extent, and the collateral is the media rights going forward. So that you could have private equity in this type of thing, and it would be a complete break off from the NCAA, and probably under the CFP type umbrella or something along those lines. But does it happen? I don't know. I mean, if something happens, that's what I see happening. I don't see conferences getting a whole lot bigger, because you're just getting too many mouths to feed at the table, and all you're doing is you're still having some matchups. I mean, I went and looked at the Big Ten schedule for next year, and the what people say is going to be the SEC schedule, and there's still certain weeks where there's not good games, and you had it this year. There was a couple of weeks, midway through the season, where there was just not a lot of great matchups that people wanted to pay a whole lot of attention to. And then you still have the problem of the SEC playing that whatever week it is, 10 or 11, where they play they play all the FCS games late in the season. And that creates a problem as well. So, if you're going to get top dollar from TV, you got to have a situation where you've got good matchups every weekend. And look, it's going to be an NFL type TV model. You're going to have, probably 4 windows on 3 or 4 channels every day. Or every Saturday. There'll be Friday night games, probably a doubleheader. There'll be special date games, the Sunday of Labor Day weekend. There'll be probably a Black Friday game, probably a Thanksgiving game up against the NFL. You're going to have a Sunday ticket type product, Saturday ticket, because some of the games are just going to be regional, but they'll all be televised, and they'll still have, some relation to the conference networks or something. But again, this is football
like
only.
A pay-per-view, something like that. You can
Sunday,
model.
like Sunday ticket, sell single games, sell season packages, sell whatever for the games that aren't available in your area for the displaced fans, not unlike what the NFL does. So all those things would go into it. But again, I think you need to understand, I mean, we're talking about football only here. And then I think the other sports probably revert back, excuse me, to more of a regional concept, to lessen the travel. And, football only travels 6-7 times a year, right?
Yeah.
The rest are home game. But some of these, you get into basketball, who's playing 40 games, half of that's on the road. And so to the extent you can, re-regionalize the non-football sports, I think that's a benefit to all involved, and would still have interest from TV. And I also think those entities that don't qualify or aren't invited to the split off group, there's still going to be value in those TV rights as well. I mean, you've got these conference channels that still need product. You've got, there's some other sports networks that aren't going to play, up in the big league for those rights. And so there'll be an interest for some of those other rights, just like there's interest for G5 rights now. And some of it will be streaming, some will be linear. But I think it's not happening soon, because there's too many deals that are TV deals that are just in their infancy. And, the Big 12 deal hasn't even started yet. And the Big 10 is in its second year, and, SEC's really goes full ESPN next year. So a lot of the stuff's just getting started, but there's going to be a time down the road where everyone's going to say, okay, what's next? Because everybody's going to be looking for it. Now, this doesn't eliminate NIL as it relates to paying the student athletes. The whole other NIL is that's a totally different thing. And I think NIL is when it's not pay for play, it's a good thing. Beyond that, I can't say a whole lot more about NIL.
Okay. Moen?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you thought if the college football playoffs were negotiated maybe a year and a half ago, they'd have got more money for them. With the recent rating success of the Ohio State-Michigan game, some of these other marquee matchups, why do you think that there would be less money as opposed to more money in it?
Well, you're right. I mean, Moen, you're absolutely right. The ratings have been tremendous, and the ratings for the NFL have been tremendous. And the problem is that the advertising revenue, which is what's driven by ratings, represents just a portion of the revenue that the TV networks make. The other, and certainly on the cable side of things, and more important side, is what the subscription fees are from the distributors, whether it be a Comcast or a DirecTV or Spectrum or whoever, pay to the networks. And they pay not only for cable type channels, they also pay for local TV stations, and those local TV stations pay the broadcast networks like Fox or ABC who purchase the rights. So, and that's the model that seems to be broken right now, is that what used to be 105 million TV homes subscribe to some form of the so-called bundle, and the networks would get paid for all 105 million of those houses. Even my 90-year-old mother-in-law who doesn't know what an ESPN is, they're still getting money for her. Well, now with cord cutting, that number's dropped. We're down to 70 million, and it's dropping like the stone. And so, at some point, that model, you've lost 30%, 40% of your revenue just off the top, and your rights fees have continued to rise. So that creates this inflection point where, at some point they're going to have to, combine with streaming, and what's left of the bundle, hopefully will, allow for continued increases of some form to the CFP or to the conferences or to the super conference or whatever it is. But right now there's kind of at an inflection point halfway between the bundle and then the streaming products. And at this point, the streaming products haven't picked up enough slack to compensate for the loss in cable subscribers.
Anything
Long
else,
answer.
That's
No,
that's
good.
well, no, that's interesting. But do you think? I mean, obviously ESPN and Fox are going to be bidders. They're definitely going to bid on the CFP package. But what about the non-traditional, like an Amazon, an Apple Plus? Don't you think there might be somebody out there who might want to overspend to get a piece of that?
Right. I think though, certainly we'll look at everything, and they have looked at everything that's come up over the last number of years. They're very selective though. I think, let's use just the 4 games coming up, or the first round games coming up in the next 2 years in the CFP. That doesn't really fit. That's you shoot your whole wad in one weekend.
Right.
Right.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a streamer who's trying to, generate new subscriptions, or sell new Amazon Prime memberships, or in the case of Apple TV memberships, and getting people into the Apple ecosystem. So, now the Thursday Night Football, that's a perfect example of what works for Amazon, and the MLS is a perfect example of what works for Apple TV. They can show it over the whole world, and every Apple phone, anybody with Apple TV can, you pay the money, you can get the MLS package. So it just really depends on what the product is. I think if you carved out a streaming package, like say the NBA, I would expect will have some carve out for a streaming package in their next rights deal. So there's money there, and you're going to see probably more people involved. In terms of carriers, it's not going to just be a Fox ESPN thing. I mean, I think it's an NFL type model going forward, and it looks a lot like what the Big Ten has, but it's even more, broader with like I mentioned, the Sunday ticket type product, maybe per game pay-per-view things like that.
This question from Ryan Thomas. You might recognize his name. It's Ryan G. Thomas from Twitter. I know you've chatted with him before. He says
yes.
Conferences won't exist for football in 10 years. It'll be a one-league football playoff subdivision of 64 schools broken into 4 geographic conferences with 2 divisions each. League will control scheduling. What do you think about that?
That's very possible. I mean, I don't
years,
know.
10 years is a pretty short horizon, though, isn't it?
I think 10 years might be too long.
Oh, okay.
I think, the next round of TV deals, the next window for this to happen would be in 2030. And I think you're going to have a bit more shakeout as to, how the TV infrastructure and the TV model is there. We're kind of, like I said, we're in between the bundle era and the streaming era. And, as soon as that all settles out, combined with the fact that the rights deals are expiring.
Right.
And those are the inflection points you need to think about. If you look at all realignment, you look at all movement as it relates to college sports, it's been around expiration of TV deals, because that allows for movement. Now, he could be right in that it doesn't happen in 2030 and it goes to 2036, 2035, 2036 when the ACC deals up. So, it's very possible. I mean, but it's going to be at one of those points when TV rights deals, kind of the sun and the moon and the stars all align. I don't know about this. I don't know about the 64 teams. That seems heavy to me. That's twice the size of the NFL, and
I think the idea behind that thought is you bring in the biggest brands. Right now, there's 69 schools that are in FBS, top tier A4 leagues. And so I think that's where that number comes from. It would also regionalize. If everybody's equal, you'd have to unify, like you've said, the media contracts. And that would be, I don't know. I just think 10 years seems too short to me, but I'm probably wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about.
The other thing, though, is with that many schools, I'm not sure you solve the matchup problem where there's too many not great matchups. And that would be my concern with it. But, I don't know. He could be right. It's, this is all crystal ball stuff. And, mine's not a whole lot clearer than anybody else's.
All right. I only have 2 more questions for you. Moen, I'll give you one of them.
Okay. So talking about the disparity right now, we're kind of in the in-between between the bundle and the streaming packages. Don't you think that there's a possibility that they could use streaming packages to leverage more money out of the broadcast partners? Or do you think the broadcast partners would just say, enough's enough. This is as high as we're going to go. Go ahead and take that ridiculous offer from Amazon for the playoffs.
Right.
We're not paying anymore.
Well, the interesting thing is that all of the broadcasters, other than Fox, are also streamers. ESPN has got ESPN Plus, and there will be a stream version of ESPN here probably in the next year or two.
You're talking direct to consumer, which they announced last year.
Exactly. CBS has Paramount Plus. NBC has Peacock. Fox is the only one out there, but Fox is it looks like they're going to go down kicking and screaming. But they own streaming rights for all their products. They've just at this point chosen not to utilize that option. They don't even put most of the games on the Fox Sports app, and their numbers have still been fine. So people are figuring out a way to access that Fox product, even though the numbers are down. I mean, the bundle numbers are down. What's pretty clear is that the people who are hanging on to the bundle are sports fans, because that's what you can't not have the bundle and be a sports fan. I mean, you can have all the streaming services you want, but if you don't have cable or you don't have satellite, you're missing out on so much content that's either not on, it's either on Fox or it's on ESPN, because those aren't available to stream. And until such time as that ESPN, and that's why a lot of people are hoping it takes ESPN a long time to do that, because that does have the potential of making the bundle go into a death spiral. But there's going to be another bundle. It's just going to be a streaming bundle.
All right, last question. This is really probably the most right this minute type deal that might happen in the next 2 months that I'm not sure you would have an answer for, but I'm going to pose it anyway. If Florida State, North Carolina, Miami, and Clemson do the impossible and break the ACC, even if two of them, North Carolina and Florida State, leave the ACC, does it open up that media deal for renegotiation? And if it does, does that mean there's a potential for other schools to be able to leave at somewhat of a cheaper rate?
Well, one of the reasons that the ACC went ahead and added 3 schools was for just that reason.
To insulate themselves against those losses.
Yeah, all these contracts have, they all call them something different, but it's basically a composition clause. And it says it will have these teams, or these schools will be members. And then, but there's also a provision for movement that, schools may come, and as long as at the end of the day you have X number of Division I, schools, then you're okay. That doesn't mean that if those schools you mentioned all left, then I was the TV guy, that I wouldn't, I'd certainly go have a long chat with the folks in Charlotte, because it's not what you bought, and they got to understand that. And so I would expect that there'd be some negotiation on that, but I don't know if it would get to the point where you blow the deal up. You also have the ACC network that creates, makes some decent money, not a ton, but it makes some money, and ESPN owns 100% of that. Right. So they're incentivized to have that continue to operate. So I don't know. I think it would be interesting to see. I think for at least a while, if I'm the TV partner in that situation, I just kind of step back and see what happens, because if those schools you mentioned leave, all hell's going to break loose.
Absolutely.
It's going to be in court for quite a while, unless somehow, some way, they reach some agreement with the conference that says you can go.
Right. I know you watch the show, you follow us on Twitter, and you see the interactions we have with the fans. Do you have any questions for us that we can, I'm always curious what you bring up, and I pay attention to those things. Is there anything you
Well,
want to hear from us?
yeah. Do you guys have day jobs too, or do you just do this?
I do have a day job. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm an
do.
independent contractor, Bob, so I've got a lot of
Okay.
free time.
I know those. What about Immaculate? I mean, he seems to be out on.
We don't know what he does. It might be selling drugs. We're not sure. It's out on the edge somewhere. But we miss him tonight because I know he always brings some good questions. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being here. And again, being basically at my request, you just show up, and I really appreciate that. So as we go through the bowl games this month, we might try to get you one more time before the end of the month, if that works for you.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Hey,
All
I'll tell you one thing right now. I just looked at the Fiesta Bowl, and there's a lot of tickets available.
Yeah, I know. Poor Liberty. The Liberty's going to play the biggest game in their school's history, and there's going to be like 5 people watching.
Well, I think
that's
Liberty
bad.
will probably travel well. I think Oregon's got some bowl fatigue and probably wanted to be in some other bowl game, obviously.
Yeah.
And I don't know, at least at this point, I don't know. We'll see. But the opening day was not a huge ticket sales. So
No, and the bowls aren't what they used to be. That's just perfectly honest, and next year it'll be even worse because they'll be watered down with these other playoff games. The juice is all out of bowl games anymore because nobody plays in them. Everybody wants to be for the NFL, or they want to heal up from injuries, and they don't care if they win the game. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, that's a problem that needs to be dealt with, and I don't know how they do it, if it's insurance policies or what, but
Right.
They gotta figure something out, because the Bulls are gonna just wither if they don't figure something out.
Agree.
All right, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bob.
All
We
right.
appreciate
Thanks,
you
Bob.
being here.
All right, take care.
Have a great night. Bye-bye. We'll see you later.
All right, see you.
Oh my goodness, how lucky is that, Moen? We got Bob
We always
Thompson.
learn so much when Bob comes by.
We do, and it's because we ask him questions nobody else does, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, we
think that's-
pester him.
Yeah, we do pester him a little. I try to get him out of here before he complains. He's probably watching this right now on the recording going, these guys kept me too long. I swear, Bob, I wasn't keeping you around for as long as possible. I wanted to get you out on a short time, so you want to come back. Anyway, we've had so much, and I know you've been tracking stuff in the chat. Before we get to the chat, before we get to anything else, let me quickly bump a couple of advertisers that I've got locally, and I'm going to have more coming as well once I get product. But first one I want to do is for Josh War. You can find him at, let me put up his title, get his card up here so everybody knows how to find him on Twitter. It's Josh_War. He makes custom designs. This is the digital cougar. This is one example. I asked him to make this for me. So if you wanted one for Ohio State, Moen, and you wanted to go and have one cut out, they're about, you can see it, I don't know, what is that, 12 by 8, something like that. They're pretty good. They're cut out of plyboard, so they're almost a quarter inch thick, maybe even closer to a third of an inch. And the quality is amazing. I don't know if you can see the high gloss, but these are some fantastic graphics that they got. There's another one they made for me based on a customized, I sent him a video file and he made this for me. This is for, where are we at here? This is for my alma mater. This is where my bomber nickname comes from. And he took this right off of a digital file I sent to him, which is one of the coolest signs I've ever seen that wasn't inside the high school itself. So I would encourage anybody, go to Josh War Custom Designs or Signs and look him up. Send him a file. He'll give you a price, and he ships it right to you. It's all bing, bang, boom, and it's really easy. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Coug Connect, the BYU NIL. Up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you can see a QR code. You can scan that QR code for Coug Connect, BYU NIL, and you can become a BYU NIL supporter. $10 a month goes a long way. It will help build the program if you put more money in that, and I want to encourage everybody to do that. Also, before we start losing people, I want to make sure we invite everybody to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and turn on your notifications on YouTube. and on after you follow on Twitter, turn those notifications on, and you will know when our shows are. Okay. Oh, you sent me a note here. I need to check this more often. All right.
I just saw
So
your note.
you were watching all the
I was watching chat.
messages, right? You were
Yeah.
tracking that. You and Immaculate do that for me. What was are there a couple comments that you want to call out that really stood out to you as we had that interview with Bob?
Cleveland Rocks really liked my fedora and sunglasses. He said I'm ready for the solar eclipse.
Oh, that's
next
right.
year.
We got a super chat from him. He says, help for
That's
the
right.
electric bill. Thank you so much, Cleveland Rocks. We really appreciate that.
I'm going to spend it on a new fedora. We're not paying the light bill.
It all helps. Right now, all the money we're getting is going back into this thing. So we're not making money quite yet. But thank you very much, Cleveland Rocks. We really appreciate you being a paying member and being here with us. Thank you very much. The other one we just got is Ryan Thomas. And he says, just a reminder for all, Michigan sucks. Okay. I didn't get a chance. I was going to ask him about Arbonne.
I might get Josh Ward to make me a custom sign to put out on my tree to pee on.
There, okay, there, whatever of Michigan, that would be great. I encourage everybody to go to Josh_War on Twitter. Send him a message. He's a great guy, and yeah, he'll make all your signs, all your sign dreams come true for Christmas. All right. Are there any other comments you want to talk about that you were watching the stream?
Yeah, we had a lot of people going back and forth on ACC versus Big 12, merger, no merger, subdivision splitting, the best of the ACC, the best of the Big 12 forming up. Lots of great comments on that. And a lot of people disappointed, they don't want to see the kind of Premier League subdivision like Bob Thompson was envisioning. A lot of fear of losing traditional rivalries, losing traditions. So, but yeah, the ACC Big 12 stuff is interesting because the rumor was out there that the ACC and Big 12 would somehow merge.
Yeah, I don't. Whoever started that, and I think I know who started it, but I'm not going to mention him. Whoever started that, he had a reason for starting that rumor.
Yeah, I don't see that happening either.
Yeah, and I will say this: that the guy who started that rumor, he's reporting what other people are telling him, right? I don't blame him for any of his reporting because all he's doing is getting notes from other people and deciding whether he should pass that on or not. So it may be true, it may not be true, but I would just tell everybody, and I said this right after that notification came out on Twitter, that make sure you dive into your sources. When you start seeing comments that seem kind of out there, dive into it. Do some deep digging. Don't just take what you're seeing on Twitter as gospel, because I guarantee you it's probably not. At the very least, the details will change a lot of the time. Let's see. I don't think, and to answer your question, I don't think the Big 12 and the ACC, the Big 12 has no incentive. Brett Yormark would never basically lessen what he's earned, what the level that they've got the Big 12 to, which is the third best conference. There's no way in hell he's going to do anything that hurts that.
Right. And I would just say that if Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson, and let's say Miami somehow get out, they're paying a hefty chunk.
Right.
Nobody's leaving the ACC till they get their taste of that money.
Exactly right.
So they're going to disperse that over 10 years. So that's going to be an extra 10 million, 20 million in their pocket a year. Louisville's not going to leave for the Big 12 when they're getting paid that much money extra.
Right. Really quick, I wanted to. Oh, sorry, you were.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless the Big 12 wants to pay them that extra 10 or 20 million.
Right.
But I don't think they want to do that.
I don't think they have it to pay. I think they're as bare bones as any of these conferences that aren't the two. Yeah, I don't think they'd have the money. Unless there is an unless there, and the unless is if Washington State and Oregon State are able to win their lawsuit and actually get all that money, hundreds of millions of dollars, then I could see them buying their way into the Big 12. I've said this for months and months and months. I still think that's an opportunity out there because that thing hasn't been settled yet. I know you don't think that it's so much still a possibility, but I really do believe that could still happen. I'm trying to give a little faith, a little pick me up to Wazoo and
I
Oregon State fans. But go
I
ahead.
still think they could make it to the ACC. I think that I explained this to somebody on Twitter. They want to keep all their options open.
Right.
That's why they
Right.
didn't try and reform the Pac-12 right now. They didn't go all in on the Mountain West.
That's right.
They want to see what happens. If
Yeah.
Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami jump, the ACC is going to need more schools, and they'd be good travel partners for Stanford and Cal. So
Right.
I think that's their best fit is the ACC.
Sergeant Pickles, and again, one of our paid members, says, shout out to the Tri-Cities. That's in reference to my Richland Bombers sign. So, Pickles, I'm going to challenge you, besides Venmoing money for my UW jersey, get a hold of Josh War and have him make a UW sign, because they are awesome. You can put it on your porch. Everybody'd see it when they come knock on your door. It'd be awesome to have outside. So shout out to the Tri-Cities. I appreciate that. Okay, a couple of announcements. I'm going to share the screen right now. We have, and I say we very in the royal we, what am I trying to say? In the royal we manner. We went and created a fantasy football bowl. What's it called? A bowl series?
It's a pick 'em.
Okay, and it's free and open to everybody. I'm going to post the link. Let me put it right here. I've also published it out on Twitter. All you have to do is sign up for that and join the Big 12 Mafia Bowl Mania, as what Capital One is calling it. And it's called a graduated pick. What's the actual title for the type of pick it is?
It's a confidence pick.
Confidence pick.
So you're going to assign confidence points for all the bowls.
That's
the one
right.
you're most confident in, you're going to assign the most points to. The one you're least confident in, you're going to just assign 1 point to.
That's right. So confidence picking, and it's free to sign up. Go to the link and join us. I think what we have maybe 9 days before the first bowl game is around. So do it now. We're going to probably have to shut it off. Probably, I'm going to say by this time next week, we'll probably have to close the thing down. But everybody's invited, and I'd love to see a bunch of people from the viewing audience sign up for this. It's free to do, free to sign up. And I'm working on getting some prizes for the end. I won't win it. Moen won't win it. Immaculate won't win it. Ute won't win it. This is just for you guys, the listening audience. It's a way for me to start giving back to you guys, and I'm happy to do that. You guys have been awesome. I also am sending out rally towels to people that become full-time members of the channel and are paying. And I encourage people to do that as well. I'm going to go to that setup on my YouTube page right here. And I'm going to have you, since I haven't imported it yet, I'm going to have you watch this video. Give me 1 second. Actually, I might be able to do the present thing. Video file. Let's try this. See if I can get it to run. Where's it at? Oh, now I forgot where I put it. Oh, here it is. Here's the video right here.
Member of Big 12 Mafia by going to our homepage and hitting the join button located next to the subscribe button in the upper right corner. There are several membership levels to choose from.
All right. Thank you very much. That's fantastic, by the way, Moen. Thank you so much for putting that together for me.
Yeah, and I just want to let people know we're going to be working on new things for memberships. So new icons, emotes, people who are long-term members will get special icons, 6-month members, 3-month members, so on and so forth. So keep an eye out on that. That's something that we're actively working on here at the channel.
Sergeant Pickles, a paid super chat. He says, my vote is for Mario Bailey, retro UW jersey. I know who Mario Bailey was. I didn't follow him, though, Pickles. So I'm going to have to go and do some research on him. His name sounds familiar to me, but I mean, Steve Entman was my pick, and that's all the way back to 1991. So it just shows you how old I am. Anyway, thank you very much for the super chat, Pickles, as always. All right, let's see if we can get are there any other announcements? I think I've done all my announcements. Did you have anything else you want to say before we start answering some of these questions and comments?
No, I think we've got it all covered. So
okay, all right. Let's.
But yeah, I am going to win this bowl pick'em. This is my redemption run. Don't listen to Nate. I'm going to win.
I don't know. I just won the last season, so we'll see. Maybe you'll win. All right, let me get to some of these comments. First of all, Rock Chalk says it was a Love the interview with Bob. Thank you very much. Our Web says you guys are cracking me up. Both Our Web and Rock Chalk are paying members. You can tell that by looking at their name, Our Web, and the little symbol next to them. That shows that they're paid members of the channel. And I encourage everybody to be doing that over this holiday season. If you have questions about it, feel free to send them to me on Twitter, and I'm happy to answer those. Steve Ojai, Florida says, great segment. Shonsky says the traditions of college football are almost forgotten. What do you think? You're nodding your head. What do you think about that?
It's true. I mean, but you can't dwell on the past too much. We got to look for the future as well.
Right.
So we're losing some stuff, but we're gaining some stuff too. New rivalries. Let's see how the Pacific Northwest likes playing in the Midwest, and
Right.
let's see how USC likes coming to play in the snow in Minnesota in December or November.
Yeah. I agree. They're not used to playing. Yeah, I agree with you. I think
Gonna
it's
be a
going to be a
shock.
rough. It's going to be a rough road to hoe. I think Washington and Oregon are much more prepared to play Big Ten football than USC and UCLA are currently today.
Yeah, just wait till the
And
Husker fans hit LA.
well, and I guess we're 8 months from the season again coming around, but I actually might pick USC to go 6-6 and UCLA to go 4-8. I mean, it could be that bad.
It's a possibility. Yeah, it's a serious possibility.
Another comment here from Philport76 says Bob Thompson shows are the best of what is already a great channel. Thank you very much, Philport. We really appreciate you and being here.
Yeah, Bob's great. We learned so much from Bob.
We really do. We really, really do.
We love to hobnob with Bob.
I'm gonna do that eventually. If he's still watching, Bob, I am gonna track you down. We're gonna do a round of golf down there. I'm gonna make that happen. That's my new goal in life. All right. Let's see here. Cleveland Rock says, just happy the Big 10 and Big 12 will finally be interesting to watch next year with realignment. What do you think about that?
It's true. I mean, the Big Ten, there's some people who love that Big Ten West football, but I don't mind a good defensive game. I mind it when it happens every single game in the Big Ten West. The West-East division split has been terrible for the Big Ten. Getting rid of divisions is going to make this so much better from a conference standpoint.
Who actually made that happen?
That was because we originally had Legends and Leaders.
I know. I was just going to say, whose idea was that? Whose idea was that? Legends and Leaders.
You might want to talk to Bob Thompson.
All right. I'm going to send him a note on Twitter because I think that is one of the dumbest sports ideas. Besides New Coke, Legends and Leaders was a horrible
Well, Legends
idea.
and Leaders was a lot more balanced. And then they went that geographic route, and it's just the West never lived up to it. They thought Nebraska and Wisconsin were going to be these heavyweights out there, and it just never happened.
Yeah. Bo Stacker says we're rivals in the majority of the ACC. Of course, they're gonna talk. And I'm not gonna say that, but yes, that's true, Bo. You're exactly right. That sentiment is held by a lot of people. I think we need to get away from this idea, though, that to be a proponent of your own conference means you need to crap on somebody else's conference. That all started, and I haven't said his name in a long time, but that all started with Tony Altimore last summer. He started the mixing in of everybody together, saying that some people are better than others. And he was talking about the Pac-12 and he was talking about the ACC were much better than the Big 12. And now the world's turned on its head and we don't see Tony Altimore anymore. So I hope we get away. I hope this next year we start to see some healing, because just because I'm a proponent of the Big 12 expanding doesn't mean it doesn't lower the value of you believing that the ACC might pick up a couple of Big 12 schools and they might get stronger, right? Either one of us could be right. But we need to get away from this thing that because I'm doing better, that means you must be doing worse. It's not a zero-sum game here. Let's see. Let's go down to Craig Kirsch says the Big 12 will pick the four they want that are left. He's talking about the ACC. More conversations about the ACC. Okay, here's a good one that we haven't talked about. C. John says, "Oh boy, there's a three alarm fire in the KSU athletic department, basketball and football. That is a fact." And have you followed that enough, Moen, to be able to speak on it?
Well, I we saw the OC today leave to join Texas A&M.
Right. And then a
Um,
basketball player got kicked off the team.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know the details of those. Do you?
Right, but I don't know the thing about the basketball player, but
Okay.
basically, and I was telling Wild Youth this. He's like, well, "Why would you leave Kansas State for Texas A&M?" And it's money.
Oh, I
They're
would.
they're,
That's
they're
not even a
paying you
question.
a
Yeah.
whole lot of money. But I mean, Kansas State has held on to their head football coach so far.
Right.
I mean, that was a major fear that I think they had throughout the season, especially with Iowa potentially replacing Ferentz.
Yeah, you're right. We're gonna have our next show isn't gonna be Friday this week. We're gonna start a Saturday series. Immaculate can't do Fridays, I guess. So I'm not sure of the time of that show, but we'll bring up KSU and I'll do some research on it. Maybe have a couple of tweets and maybe a long form explanation in an article or something like that. See, John, and then we'll talk about it because all I know is that it seems like there's a lot of noise around the athletic department, and it wasn't good noise. So we'll talk about that more in future shows. Let's see here. Ryan Thomas, another comment, says the reason why an ACC Big 12 merger could happen would be so the remaining members could still get their money and not water down the conference with more AAC additions. I guess you're right. That is a possibility, Ryan. I just disagree with the premise. Right now the Big 12 is in a superior position. They can pick and choose. Why would you want to merge and bring in schools? No reason to name them, but bring in schools that don't necessarily bring the pop on the video. Maybe Moen will say the schools.
The Louisville, Pitt, Wake Forest. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree. I'm with you. I don't think this merger thing is even a real feasible possibility. It's an A4 world.
Right.
The ACC is going to be around, guys. It's just what incarnation of it continues to exist. I don't see anybody bolting for the Big 12 while the payday is still there.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Casting for Chrome finally made it here. Good to see you, Jet. Welcome. Bo Stacker has an explanation because it's probably going to cost $10 million a year payout for the trust. Not all schools will be able to afford that. So he's talking about the conversation that with the article from Baker that basically said they were going to build a trust fund.
Mm-hmm.
And in that trust fund, they were going to pay players health insurance and some of these other things to make it so that if something happens while they're playing, they're being cared for. Not your average school is going to be able to come up with the money every year to refill that trust fund. $10 million a year is an operating budget for some of these universities. Yeah. To just put it into a holding pattern to participate in a greater league, I just don't know how anybody could do that.
I think conferences are going to mandate it.
I think it's going to come to that. Yeah. And it's a reverse relegation is what it is. You relegate yourself by setting a bar where you can't meet the expectation. So in the Premier League, the TV money is like $240 million just to qualify, just operating money for the league. That's how important it is for a team to get promoted from the championship level up to the Premier League is $240 million. They write you a check and that's it. If we were in Premier League in the United States for college football, the difference in those schools to be able to stick around, I bet you it might, if it's a 50-team Super League, and I don't think it will be, but say 50, and you have 4 that might move up and down every year, I'm not sure there's 10 schools that could support itself on the lower tier long enough to be promoted. They might weed themselves out.
Possibility, but like I said, I think if conferences mandated it, you're going to see the A4, all of them are going to mandate it so that all their schools are participating.
Right.
This is really the ones that would really get impacted by this would be G5 schools. Because those G5 simply cannot afford to enter into this new division of football.
That's true.
You know, some of them, like the reason we play smaller schools at Ohio State every year is because that one game against Ohio State is their entire athletic budget for the year.
That's right.
That money they get paid. So those kind of schools, the MAC schools, cannot afford to be in this division. It is really a haves and a have-not situation.
Phil Port 76, another comment. He says the SEC fans created this conference belittling, in my opinion. In the big, we might respect each other, but we aren't homers for each other. I'm not talking about this level of belittling. What I'm talking about is an entire group of media people, personalities or journalists that went out of their way for an entire year to talk about a conference like they were basically junk bond salesmen. And they were the AAA assets. And yet that's not what ended up happening. AAA asset Pac-12 went bankrupt. AAA asset ACC is falling apart and is potentially on its last legs, depending on what happens with the big schools in that conference. Everybody says, well, the ACC is so much better than the Big 12 right now. And on paper, that is absolutely true. But everybody knows they haven't gone through their Pac-12 moment. They haven't had their Oklahoma and Texas leaving. They haven't had their USC, UCLA leaving event. That event is still to come. That's why it's so different. They're not equal. The Big 12 and the ACC are not at all on equal footing. The Big 12 has already had its moment and is growing from that moment. The ACC still has to go through that earthquake of a time, and that's what people don't think about. I don't think it's easy to lose track of how much time has passed between these events.
Well, the ACC does benefit that they got to watch that.
That's true. That's true.
They're doomsday preppers, so I'm sure they've got their iodine caplets and fish antibiotics ready.
Probably. Let's see here. Did I miss one from Mr. Monkey Says? I didn't see it. Where was it at? Daniel Gygax says West Virginia lost all of its conference rivals when the Big East broke up. Is ISU or KSU and Morgantown the same as Pitt? VPI, no way, but West Virginia had to do what they had to do, and the ACC didn't take them, so going to the Big 12 is the natural option. The question is going to be, is the ACC, or can the Big 12 steal Pitt and Louisville and Virginia Tech and North Carolina State potentially? If the Big 12 can steal those schools, the ACC it's going to be, it's not going to be good.
You're not going to get Pitt. You might get Louisville. Louisville might be the most doable in that situation. With the academics involved in that conference, I think Pitt will want to stay put where they're at.
It depends what the money is renegotiated once they lose. I mean, if there's a $20 million gap between Big 12 and ACC money, I do think that the Pitt would consider that.
Well, I think that'll be offset by whatever the buyout is. So
for a few years, but not at the end of the day. I mean, in 10 years, that money's gone. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's all they need is they just need that short term.
Let's see here. Blaze Barstow says, well put, Bomber. Thank you, Blaze. I appreciate that. I try to be as clear and concise as I can. Sometimes I misspeak. There's been times when I've said something, somebody's clipped that out, put it on Twitter and said, hey, look what Bomber said. And everybody makes mistakes, right? But I do try to be as clear as I can. And I'm not telling you guys what to think. No, just trying to present the data as it is. Moen's pretty good at keeping me straight on that regard. Here's another one from Shonsky. He says, do you think BYU will opt in being owned by the LDS Church? BYU at this point will do whatever it takes to stay in that bigger league. I think BYU could easily be the 44 or 45th team on a 48-team pick'em if it went to that much. But everybody needs to realize that it would have to come from donors, the money, the difference, because the LDS Church does not give the athletic department any money. Tithing does not go to BYU football. If it did, we would be as big as Notre Dame. And I promise you that's a guarantee, but the church doesn't do that. So anyway, good question. Good comment. Let's see here. Casting for Chrome says, don't think it will happen to the Big 12. Yeah, we'll see. Sergeant Pickle says, Pitt to the Big. Why don't you expound on that? We've talked about that before, but why don't you expound on that?
Penn State is going to be vehemently anti-Pitt. They don't want another school in Pennsylvania inside the conference. Outside of that, if Pitt somewhere else in a different state, they'd be a natural fit for the Big Ten. High academic standards, Midwestern style football team. They would be in the Big Ten if they weren't in the state of Pennsylvania. But Penn State's going to block them.
So this is interesting. I'm going to not necessarily break some news, but I want to show everybody something because I think this is another step in the downfall of the current committee for the college football playoff. Let me bring this page up so everybody can see what I'm looking at. I just found I would always watch Twitter during the show so I can make sure I get news items out. Let's see. It's not broadcasting. Add to stage. So I just saw a notification that said the College Football Playoff Committee's contact site can no longer be found. It's returning a 404. So they were getting carpet bombed by FSU and ACC people. So they shut down their Twitter. I think that's hilarious. And I don't think that's a surprise. Do you think that's a surprise?
It's not shocking at all to me, but it's not as if they were going to. I mean, who does that contact page even lead to? You know, some unpaid intern somewhere who's
maybe
just, clicking and deleting.
Maybe. Bo Stacker's got it right. We heard the same narrative for a year. No Pac school will ever go to the Big 12. Okay. You don't need to talk about that anymore.
Never say never in realignment, guys. We don't know what's going to happen. The Big Ten could fall apart. Who knows? Could get too big too fast.
Daniel Gygax says, no way Pitt is going to the Big as long as PSU and the Ohio State are in the Big. And you actually disagree with that, right?
Well, no, I think there's no way Pitt's going as long as PSU's going to block them.
Okay.
Penn State has the power to block Pitt.
Okay. We're at 60 people watching live on YouTube. I didn't check the Twitter number. There were 15 at one point. But if you're new to the channel, we glad to have you here. Please subscribe to the channel. Follow both of us on Twitter, and then turn on your notifications so you know when our next shows are. Our next show this week is going to be Saturday. I'm not sure the time, but as soon as I do, obviously, I'll share that with everybody. Let's get through some more of these comments. So I think, do you have another 15 minutes in you?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
From the peanut gallery here.
If you want your comment to be, that's the other thing I was meaning to say. If you want your comment to be read, guaranteed it has to be a super chat. I'm not excluding people that are paid members, but we go super chats first, then we go paid members second in priority, and then regular comments are third. So just so everybody knows, we're being honest brokers here. Phil Port says you present clear and honest, Bomber. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Phil Port. Let's see. Shonsky says, yeah, I know. Thanks for the info. He's talking about BYU. I'm a huge BYU fan. I've waited for this day. I don't want them to give up. Yeah, I don't either, Shonsky. I don't either. Let's see here. Steve O'High says, can ESPN renegotiate the ACC deal if teams leave? Essentially, Bob
answered this earlier.
Yeah, go ahead and tell it.
Yeah, it's a composition clause. He said there's more than likely a composition clause that says these teams are in there, or we can renegotiate. So more than likely, yeah, the ESPN can renegotiate if those schools leave.
Sorry, I just heard a thing from an advertiser. Let me go to I've got a different logo here. Let me do this really quick. So the next QR code I've got up here in the corner. Let me bring in the banner for them. Actually, I didn't create one. Hang on. Well, let me not create a banner. Let me just go with the QR code. There's a QR code on there right now that's for BYU mini helmets. And this is what they look like. They're really cool for either crunching. If you're a Utah fan, I saw somebody sent me a video of somebody beating the crap out of theirs with a baseball bat, or giving it as a gift. Go to BYUminihelmets.com or scan that QR code and get one. They're cheap. They're an easy present for a dad, an uncle, even whoever. And they're fun to have sitting on a counter or something like that. Really want to encourage people to go to BYU Mini Helmets and buy one of those. Scan that QR code with your phone. All right. I thought I made a QR code for him, or not QR code, but I thought I made a reader for it, and for some reason it disappeared. All right. few more comments here. Ryan Thomas says BYU to the SEC. Just kidding. I'm not at all being serious. We know you're not, Ryan. No, you're not. Jan Holk is still up from Slovenia. If you weren't with us at the beginning of the show, I introduced Jan Holk. I think Jan's a guy. I guess I don't want to assume, but he's in Slovenia watching us online on YouTube or not YouTube, sorry, on YouTube on the internet. Thank you so much for being here, Jan. He's got a question here. Did you hear that they leaked Nick Saban number and he had mostly Florida numbers calling nonstop? Is that real? Did that happen?
That sounds real. I mean, if it's not real, it's
should
still
be
pretty
real.
funny. It should be real.
Anybody doxing Nick Saban? That would be funny. No, we don't want to encourage anybody doxing anybody. All right, I am through the comments. Is there anybody else? Put your comment in the comment section right now. We've got a few minutes. We can answer a few more. Other than that, we're going to lock this up if we don't get anything else. Any other? We've worn them out, Moen.
It's been a busy week. We did Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's been a heck of a run here. Let's put it that way.
Why don't you go ahead and preview some of the stuff that is going to be coming in the coming months?
We're going to have some more Mowing After Dark with me and Immaculate, doing our own kind of thing. Still trying to figure out what day we're going to do that at. Then we're going to have some more Holy Rival shows, maybe. And we're just going to kind of play it by ear and try and bring you guys some more content, some more on-demand videos, some more live streams. And like I said, we're going to start working really hard on that member section, offer the members some really cool content that they can see for themselves. So stay tuned.
I'm going to post a link again for the College Bowl Pick'em. Everybody's invited. If you're watching this and it's not live, feel free to still sign up. It'll be open for about a week. We're going to leave it open. I encourage everybody to do it. And then at the end, I've had 2 advertisers tell me that I could give away some stuff free. So there might be more than a couple. We might have 4 or 5 things to give out to people that performed well. So I would encourage everybody to sign up for that. It's fun to do. My family's done it for a long time. And I decided I was going to do it for my show. And I think
how many people we got in there so far?
I don't know. Let me do a refresh and see here. Let's see here. Where do I see that? Groups? Where do I look?
Go to groups. Hit the groups tab.
Okay.
And let's see.
So
click on the group there. Yeah.
Okay. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like 4 people have 5. 6, you see 5?
7.
Well, this is you. This is me.
Well,
sure
okay. Right.
You. So there's like 5 or 6 people who've signed up. I want everybody to sign up, please. Click on that link. Spend 20 minutes going through it. Try to beat us. I'm a pretty good picker. I ended up doing all right this last season. So I challenge everybody to join this and do this with us. All right.
Somebody take Nate down a peg or 2.
Yeah, that's right. It's a challenge. Come and get me. Shonsky, it's at B12 Mafia. It's on all these flashy signs behind me. You can see it there on my logo. Send me a DM and let's talk about NIL. That'd be great. Let's see if there's anything else here. Steve High Florida says regarding my ACC in my previous comment. Yeah, very good. Thank you, Steve. Bo Stacker says tonight is the basketball BYB in Morgantown. Can I get an ESP? What does that mean? Do you know what that means?
But bring your own beer, I assume. Is...
Oh, okay. All right. And can I get an ESP? What's that?
You got me.
Okay. I don't know. Either.
I love my West Virginia homeboys, but
oh, for sure, they're some of the best. Absolutely.
Sometimes I don't know what they're talking about.
Casting for Chrome says I will be putting in my winning picks tonight. All right, I challenge you.
There you go.
Casting for Chrome, come down and take me down. Jan Holk says he already did it.
Yeah.
And he's in Slovenia, so if he can do it, anybody can do it.
Backyard brawl. That's what BYB is.
Oh, thank you. So not bring your own beer. BYOB is what I thought. Bring your own beer.
of course, the ESP is, since you can't say it, I'll say it, eat shit bit.
It's not that I can't, I just choose not to. All right. I think we are done. We've worn everything out. We've had a great time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Watch our Twitter for announcements, and make sure you do those subscriptions. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. Think about being a paying member of the channel, and then last but not least, turn on those notifications. That is really, really a big deal. Other than that, I think we're good to go. Blaze Barstow on the way out says, "Good show. I appreciate you both. Moen always has great threads and backgrounds." There you go.
That's right. I keep
All
it
right.
fly.
All right, Moen, do you want to say anything as we head out the door here?
No, thanks, guys. It's been a great week. 4 in a row. We'll see you guys on Saturday.
Saturday
Everybody
night.
can-
Well, sometimes
Everybody
Saturday
can
night.
relax and breathe for a couple of days. You won't see our faces out here talking.
We appreciate you being here. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Stay out of trouble, and peace out.